Hello, this is Charles Benninghoff, this 24th day of March 2016, to alert America to the disastrous Cuba Trade Act, which in the House has been designated as H.R. 3238 and in the Senate as Senate Bill 1543. I oppose the Cuba Trade Act, and I think you should too. In a moment, I'll let you know how you can help. First, this one salient point should be kept in mind. This act, if passed, will cost Americans hundreds of thousands, indeed, if not millions of jobs, all of which will be sent to Cuba. Barack Obama has been in the headlines for several days now as he took a vacation in the Communist Dictatorship of Cuba and partied and traveled around with the murderous Castro regime terrorists, and he appeared highly amused as Raul Castro insulted America. While some Republicans are criticizing Obama for this trip, other, I think, pathologically self-loathing Republicans are once again sucking in donations from the United States Chamber of Commerce and are laughing all the way to the bank. And this is how they're doing that. Minnesota Congressman Tom Emmer and Kansas Senator Jerry Moran, both Republicans, sponsored the Cuba Trade Act, and virtually all co-sponsors are the same Republicans pushing Obama's Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal. The American mainstream liberal media loves communist dictators, it seems, so you will never be reminded of the tens of thousands of atrocities committed by Fidel and Raul Castro since they took power in the late 50s. But for those of you who don't remember or never learned in the first place, here's a short list. The Castro regime has confirmed Hezbollah terrorist training camps in Cuba. They also have highly probable ISIL camps, and these camps are where Muslim murderers and assassins can learn Spanish before sneaking across our southern border with Mexico. Since the 1950s, the Castros have executed approximately 4,000 civilians by firing squad and hanging for their political beliefs and for their political speech, not for committing some crime other than believing and speaking against communism. The Castros murdered 41 women and children when they sank a tugboat loaded with Cubans trying to escape the island in 1994. The Castros have a 60-year track record of sending Christians and black Cubans of African ancestry to forced slave labor camps. A Cuban prison is the first stop on a long and tortuous road for any person who criticizes communism or the Castro brothers. Tens of thousands of Cubans have met this fate since the late 50s. The Cubans seized American companies that had long-standing investments in Cuba at the loss of billions of dollars. Since the 60s, when these confiscations took place, most of these properties have been run into the ground, and most have disappeared. Nevertheless, not one property owner so damaged has ever received a cent in payment from Cuba, and they never will under the Cuba Trade Act. Fidel Castro sent thousands of communist revolutionaries to Central and South America, Africa, and the Mideast for the purpose of overthrowing democratically elected governments at the cost of tens of thousands of innocent lives. This list could go on for hours, but that short example should suffice. Cuba is less active now in fomenting international communist terror because it is a bankrupt nation. Its once mighty benefactor, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, is long gone, and the demise of the USSR so too has the capacity to foment international warfare by Cuba. But Cuba's new patron, the corrupt and vile oil-rich kingdom of Saudi Arabia, has paid Cuba immense sums to accept, promote, and export Islamic terror through its ISIL training camp and Hezbollah training camp, now located in the interior of the Cuban island. This is just a short distance away from Mexico, so they bring in Muslim terrorists from around the world, train them in Cuba, put them on a boat. They go over to Mexico, probably to Veracruz, and take a train up to the border and cross the border. And under Obama's now lenient enforcement of our laws, which is a real misnomer, it's non-enforcement of our immigration laws, these ISIL and Hezbollah terrorists are flooding into the United States. This Cuba Trade Act would promote that. And in spite of those facts, the Cuba Trade Act would immediately remove Cuba from America's list of state sponsors of terrorism. And it would pour billions of American dollars into Cuba so the Castro regime could once again work to radicalize young people around the world. Cuba is a communist dictatorship, so all workers there are paid according to the whim and fancy of the dictatorship. Now, a government salary is estimated to range between 12 and 15, not dollars, 12 and 15 cents an hour. More American jobs will be shipped overseas to Cuba when internationalist companies, members of the United States Chamber of Commerce, realize that they can pay workers there 12 cents an hour. All sanctions would be lifted immediately, and the Castros do not have to repay the billions of dollars in property and assets that they stole from American companies in the late 50s and early 60s when they seized power. The Cuba Trade Act also authorizes the federal government to send your tax dollars to the Castros, who are billionaires, in order to promote their agricultural products. Now, the Bible in Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20 says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Woe to those who put darkness for light and light for darkness." Rewarding the Castro terrorist regime with a trade agreement and federal grant money and your tax dollars is calling evil good and darkness light. Well, so how can you help? Well, here's how. Use our campaign page to send as many faxgrams to Congress as you can. Follow the instructions now appearing at the bottom of this screen. Tell Congress to reject the Cuba Trade Act, which rewards the billionaire Castro brothers regime with a lopsided trade agreement that will kill hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of American jobs and, as well, fund terrorism. Send faxgrams to as many representatives as senators as you can, because the bill has GOP backing in both the House and the Senate, and we need to whittle down that backing until that bill is impossible to pass. Do this now and help us sink the trade agreement with Cuba. This is Charles Benninghoff signing off and wishing you Godspeed.
Satan can't make me doubt it. It's real and I'm gonna shout it. I was there when it happened, and I guess I ought to know.